that our mind becomes weaker. There's a lot of focus into our body. Although we say, no, we are not our bodies, we find as we get older and older that we feel more and more that we are encompassed in this body. And so we have physical pains, we have fatigues. The mind becomes weak. We become more dependent on others. So what do we do as we grow older? What are the choices of practices and lifestyle choices that we should make, including our attitudes, to help us transition from this worldly life deeper into our own spiritual life? This is what we're going to be speaking about today. And today, to help us with this topic, we have two eminent speakers. We have our revered Swami Satyamayananda. Welcome, Swami Satyamayananda, the head of the Seattle ashram in Seattle there, Western Washington. As you know, everybody's almost familiar with them, I believe. He was our Swami here in the assistant in Hollywood, and we've seen him many times. So we're so just happy. He's just a enjoyable Swami who's filled with information and wisdom, and he makes it very relatable. And I've heard the Seattle Center is very flourishing now with his presence. So we are just very honored to have him today to speak. We also have Dr. Sheila Patel, who will be speaking to us. As you know, she's our medical doctor and also Ayurvedic physician, who also speaks about Vedanta and putting together Vedanta and Ayurveda in a healthy, comprehensive, practical way. So we're going to hear her thoughts about this subject as well. So the format of this talk, expect to hear an hour and a half, right? We're going to have a talk by Swami Satyamayananda first, then we'll have Dr. Sheila Patel, and then we'll open it up to questions to the Zoom audience, to our live audience, and we'll have a discussion about this subject as well. So let me first, I'd like to invite Swami Satyamayananda. Swamiji, thank you so much for coming and being with us today.
Thank you very much. Om Stapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharma svarupine avatar varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. Om, salutations to Ramakrishna, who is the establisher of all dharmas, who is also the embodiment of all dharmas and the best of the avatars. Let me begin by thanking Swami Harinamananda for inviting me here to speak on the practices and lifestyle choices for immortality. That is what perked up my real interest. We, in a present state of mind and a present consciousness, if we try to do any lifestyle changes, it will be simply superficial. It needs a tectonic shift in our consciousness, as it were, to be able to prepare ourselves for immortality. Those who are old here will remember there was a movie a long time ago, and the title of the movie was From Here to Eternity. And I remember that. So we are here from here to eternity. I liked the title. Of course, it's a romantic movie based in Hawaii before the Pearl Harbor attack, etc. But the title is, are we going to launch ourselves from here to eternity? Are we feeling eternal somewhere in the midst? If no, then we have to make a certain lifestyle changes. It's not really lifestyle, it's the whole character and personality will have to undergo change. because we are not prepared for eternity, for immortality. And that reminds me also, there was an old song, if you remember, I'm not prepared for eternity. There was that John Boaz's song on the banks of the Ohio, just to get us started. It's a kind of a reminder for us that living is serious business. And when, as Harinamananda says, we are subject to all the aches and the pains, and we feel more or less trapped in the body, then what happens? Well, the world vanishes in a moment when death comes. As they say, standing on the brink of a precipice, beyond which there's the infinite yawning chasm, every mind, however hardened, is bound to recoil and ask, is this real? The hopes of a lifetime, built up little by little, with all the energies of a great mind, vanish in a second. Are they real? Have we encountered these questions? People don't look forward to dying, of course. That's morbid. But we are asked to prepare for death. Of course, not in schools or anything like that. It's our own experiences that tell us that we are, in a way, mortal. There are some people who see death as a kind of a release from the innumerable problems, physical, mental, moral, financial, or they are simply tired of living. They're exhausted. There are some people who feel they've outlived their usefulness, and now they are just simply burdens. There are, of course, those are desperate who want to end life quickly. There are also those people who want life to end, but they don't have the will or the intentions to push that idea further. They just toy with that idea. As we grow older, there are always existential problems. What am I? Who am I? And these problems, these existential problems, are characterized by thought that life, my life, had, as it were, no meaning in the final analysis. The other problem that comes is the questions about one's own personal identity. What was I? This is always accompanied by anxiety and stress. This leads to a kind of a depressed way of thinking. There's no energy there. Many people say, oh, why do you have to think about death? And religion has been trying, we've been trying to prepare ourselves for death. But nowadays, people say, oh, religion, it's an escapism from reality. Well, death is real. It's no escapism. But these people who bring these kind of specious arguments against death, they themselves try to evade or try to blank out the specter of disease, old age, etc., with innumerable distractions. It's true that we just want to be oblivious to the facts. Time, the avenger, comes and nothing is left. The saint and the sinner, the good and the bad, the king and the peasant are all rushing towards this death. People want happiness, obviously. But the idea of happiness is based mainly on, very strangely also, is to avoid pain and suffering. We have a negative idea about happiness in the sense of we approach it like that. That which is an absence of pain and suffering and misery is happiness. And people want that. As I said, life is a hard fact. Those who have lived a good life, a real good life, do not have the fear of death. And this has been proved to be true over and over again. What is life? Like a lamp constantly burning. And the oil, in those old days, used to use oil lamp, is being depleted. That is life. So here you find life is already something that is based in something else which is getting depleted. In this case, the oil. We know that to live, you've got to die, and that's happening every moment. Our cells die to give birth to newer cells. So we are in a very, I would say, a paradoxical position of life and death. We are experiencing both. And yet, our consciousness is simply not designed to think about death and the very processes of life. We are, in a way, living dead or half corpses. As Swami Vivekananda would like to say, we are hugging the form of death. But despite all our silly fears of death, death actually is the door to immortality. Yes, let me repeat it. Death is the door to immortality. When we need to enter this door, not shaking with fright and hesitation and uncertain, but with confidence in our own immortality. The Bhagavad Gita speaks of this world as Martaloka, the world of dying and death. We see death everywhere. In the yoga systems of philosophy, there are 5 main obstructions to yoga. And they are ignorance, the feeling of personal identity, attachment, aversion, and the clinging to life. Swami Vivekananda calls it the clinging to life, abhinivesh. Avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. This clinging to life, where does it come? It is a structure of your body and your mind. These 5 things are your very structure. Ignorance, egotism, or the sense of personal identity, attachment, aversion, and the clinging to life, the fear of death. These are your life. This is how life unfolds in these 5 factors. So if you're going to be ready for eternity or immortality, we will have to encounter, grapple, and conquer these 5 factors, these 5 obstructions. In the yoga philosophy, they are called kleshas, that which give you pain. Swami Vivekananda translates it as pain-bearing obstructions. And yet, through all this, humanity has been, from the very earliest days, have been thinking of immortality. All religions have been searching for this. In fact, Swami Vivekananda says the Kathopanishad, one of the most beautiful Upanishads, starts with the inquiry. When a person dies, some say that a person does not exist. Some say the person exists. And the inquirer is a young boy and he goes to the very god of death to inquire. So these questions about immortality have always been there. What happens after death? Are we ready? And the entire Upanishad is nothing but an expounding of this idea of immortality. As I said, we have to overhaul our way of thinking. We have to get a new mindset, without which it's going to be very difficult for you to think immortality. So in Buddhism, we have something called the 5 obstructions or hindrances to enlightenment. And they are desire, ill will, restlessness, sloth or / torpor or remorse, and doubt. So these are the 5 obstructions. I mentioned about Yoga Sutras. Now Buddhism also, they also speak about desire, ill will, restlessness, unceasing activity, sloth or laziness or whatever, and doubt. And what they do is they recite every day the 5 remembrances. And the 5 remembrances are: I am of the nature to grow old. I cannot escape old age. I am of the nature to grow ill. I cannot escape sickness. I am of the nature to die. I cannot escape death. I will be separated from everything and everyone I hold dear. And the 5th one is my only true possession are my actions, my karma. So here you have an idea that you've got to hold on to something called your karma. It is something that you can do, not to eliminate the other 4. These things are the very nature of being. The nature to grow old, you cannot escape old age. The nature to grow ill, you cannot escape sickness. The nature to die, you cannot escape death. and you will be finally separated from everybody and everything. This, knowing this, these prayers, these remembrances, grounds you, takes away all your illusions about yourself. And so we face ourselves squarely and with confidence. There is also popularly, they say, when does a person is old? When does the person is considered old? As soon as the person loses interest in life and loses the freshness, the fresh outlook, one is old. When one talks about killing time, one is old. When one is not interested in new things, one is old. One who is not self-reliant and repeatedly seeks help, one is old. When one keeps finding faults and criticizing everything around, one has become old. And finally, one who has lost the power of laughter and smiles, they have lost their sense of humor, they are old. So to have this, you have to have a fresh outlook, you have to have an interest in things. You don't have to simply live by killing time. That thing will kill you. You've got to be interested in new things. You've got to be self-reliant as much as possible. Stop criticizing and fault finding and laugh and smile. So this is what needs to change. And no one's going to help you here except yourself. Now, whether we believe in the doctrine of immortality or no, most of us doubt that. Are we immortal? There are two ways to look at it. One is those who have not learned their lessons in this life. What lessons? I learned so many things, you might say. Oh no, you have not learned the lessons of immortality. You've learned only the lessons of mortality. Immortality lessons are different. And this is one of the reasons why they say that death is something that you experience over and over again. Saying before you actually die, you die 1,000,000 times. But when that final time comes, then what leaves this place are your deeds and your knowledge. As the Upanishads say, yata karma, yata shrutam. Like what your karma was and like what your knowledge was. It is the only thing that accompanies you beyond the doors of death and the graveyard or the cremation ground, whatever you like. And that means there's something within each of us that survives death. This is very important. So, and then it goes for further lessons in different places. This is the doctrine of reincarnation. There are people who don't believe it. And whether you believe or not, it's a fact. And nowadays, with all this new data coming in of out of body experiences and near death experiences, the evidence for the skeptics is increasing in leaps and bounds. The evidence for something that survives, of course, death. There is then those who do not want to be reborn. Who wants to be reborn? In that case, then we'll have to go even deeper and think of your own immortality as that immortal Atman. There is something within us which is even deeper, which is even beyond the body and the mind and the senses and even the ego, etc. And that is the Atman. The Atman is by its nature immortal. And the Vedanta has been insistent on stressing this. You have to think of yourself as immortal, the Atman. And when this is established within oneself, then your external life and your external thoughts will automatically fall into place. One needs to convince ourselves over and over and over again of this truth. But the saddest part is old habits die hard. We are apt to think of ourselves as, oh, we are mortal, we are going to die, and we are old, etc. So for that, what do you do? Well, then in that process of removing these wrong ideas, you have to start then slowly and now. Because at the end of one's life, one's deeds or one's karmas, they haunt us. Yes. Things that are unfinished, things that were incomplete, things that gave us pain, things that we gave others pain. All these things come to haunt one. And that is a terrible way to live. You're haunted by your own deeds. So instead of going into remorse or depression, one must be able to think of noble, lofty thoughts on spirituality, prayer, japa, listening to talks like this, going to the Vedanta societies and hearing about the Atman. Somewhere deep down, it will find a resonance there, and your mind will vibrate on that same key. This is important. Count your blessings. We have been living in a developed country. You don't realize how fortunate you are. Imagine you have been in a conflict zone, in a war zone, or in a place which is racked with hunger and poverty and disease and famines. Then what would you do? In fact, those people there are found to show greater resilience than people like us living in a comfortable life. Somewhere it has made us soft. This kind of easy life has made us very soft. We'll have to harden, think about others. pray for the welfare of others. We'll have to take responsibilities for everything that we have done. No point in blaming others or society or the nation or the world or humanity or God or anything. We paved the way for what we are by our own thoughts and actions. And for that, we will have to take corrective measures by reversing our way of thinking. Knowing that life and even death is precious, one must work to become unselfish. Yes, now there is no time to lose. Become unselfish in your thoughts, words, and deeds. Because the more selfish we are, the more is the fear of death. The more you're subject to stress, depression, anxiety. Become unselfish. That is the best thing there. And this is called Karma Yoga. And if we do not realize the Atman that is within, then we will have to be reborn. So you still have time. Better start preparing for something that is beyond death. Be charitable, be kind, be compassionate, etc. One must be able to cultivate these thoughts of immortality as we are all embodying that immortal part of us, that's the Atman. And to think, hear about it, meditate on it, is the way called the Jnana Yoga. So you have three: Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga. So Bhakti Yoga, this also falls in Bhakti Yoga, that you keep on saying prayers over and over. There's no time to lose now. You had enough of this superficial living. Go down deep and you will find great strength, great solace, great energy. As the Upanishads say, Atmana Vindate Viryam. One obtains tremendous energy by the knowledge of the Atman. Vidyaya Vindate Amritam. And through knowledge, one attains immortality. This is something that we need to over and over and over again remind ourselves, or go to a place where you are reminded of this thing. And then we can say that we have done the changes and we are now prepared for eternity. From here to eternity. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.
Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you so much for this beautiful, inspiring talk. Please stay with us as we will have questions for you later and a conversation. Okay, I'd like to now introduce Dr. Sheila Patel, who is our resident medical doctor, our Ayurvedic physician, and who is also a caretaker. She has an elderly father who she's also firsthand taking care of. So she's going through firsthand of what happens in the aging process, and and with her father, and then what are some, maybe she's thought about this also, what are some things that we can do to prepare ourselves, and also things that we can changes, as she's going to talk about lifestyle choices and practices for immortality. Dr. Sheila Patel.
Yes, Swami. I think you can hear me. Yeah. Okay. Welcome everyone. Namaste. Good to see everyone and online. So thank you, Swami Satyamayananda for your inspiring words and love that we feel when you speak. So now I'm going to get a little more in the practical, because that's what I do. I'm a doctor. Most of you know me, but if you don't, I'm a physician. So I trained in the Western medical model and grew up here in the States, but I grew up with my father and my mother both, but raised in the philosophy of Vedanta, and read all these books, and I had that foundation of spiritual knowledge, and then went into medicine, and there was some conflict there, so to speak, with blending the two. So at some point I was introduced to Ayurveda, and immediately saw the concept of complete healing, because Ayurveda is yes, it's a health system, yes, it's a medical system, but it's also addresses body, mind, and spirit. So the foundations of Ayurveda are for body, mind, spirit, well-being. And so all of the practices, I know many of you have seen Ayurvedic physicians, or you read things and it's like, oh, eat this, do this, don't do this. And it's true. But underlying all of that is this concept that really is what grabbed me, having this concept of body, mind, spirit. I put it on the slide here, Ayurveda Amritanam. So at a superficial level, one might say, oh, Ayurveda is for immortality. So that is actually sort of what Ayurveda gets us to. But this isn't the immortality of the body, right? As Swami said, the body is mortal, like it has an end. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but more about what we can do to enjoy the ride. Because our body is our vehicle for enlightenment. It is the vehicle that we traverse this mortal experience, this human experience in. So I always tell people, I like simple analogies. So it's like driving your car on a journey. And if your car is constantly breaking down, then you don't enjoy the journey as much. Now things will happen to cars, and so we fix them periodically, but we do our maintenance and we try to keep the vehicle working, because it is how we have the journey. The mind is also very important. Also temporary. Our thoughts are temporary, our feelings, our emotions, all those things we get angry about and disappointed, and that's all temporary. And that's sort of like, again, these veils, these obstructions that Swami was talking about are these obstructions to the view, the real view, right? That cloud the windows, so to speak. So our mental practices, our meditation, our spiritual contemplation is for kind of clearing those lenses or the windows, so that we can actually see immortality all around us and we experience that. So that really is the basis of Ayurveda. Like, it's to calm the body as much as possible, deal with the vehicle, because that's really what holds us back sometimes, right? We can try to meditate, or we can want to go out and do service, but the physical body is having some issues. So it's distracting us from maybe living some purpose. Again, part of that is inevitable, but that can distract us along the way. And then, of course, we have the meditation, contemplation to keep our body somewhat calm, mind somewhat calm, because in those moments between the distractions is the silence. And that's where we experience our immortal self. It's in the silence. That's consciousness, God, whatever, our spirit. People can use different terms for it. So that's why, the practical it is important as humans and as householders and as people navigating the world. So this is what Ayurveda helps us, is to take care of the vehicle, kind of keep the windows somewhat clear, so that we can experience our immortal self, which is Atman. So this slide, this term I put on here, senescence, is a term that we use. It's a sign, biological term. That means the process of aging at the cellular level. So it is a biological reality. It is nature, we could say. See the leaves. The trees don't say, oh, I don't want to get older, right? They know, like, there's seasons to life and things change. The leaves change, they fall, the bark changes, everything. And then there's a cell death that occurs. And senescence refers to this process of aging at the cellular level. Microscopic changes do occur in our cells throughout life. I teach an anatomy and physiology class, and every system of the body that I teach, there's one slide dedicated to aging and, the respiratory system, the digestive system, the circulatory system, because it is a fact as we age that things do become insufficient. Things don't work the same way because it's programmed into our cells at the DNA level that the body does not last forever. I think next slide. But there are things we can do along the way. And Ayurveda sees aging, and again, now speaking as a medical sort of system, because when people are suffering or struggling, they, seek out healthcare. From an Ayurvedic perspective, aging is seen as a natural, inevitable process. So even though Ayurveda for immortality, there is a whole branch of Ayurveda, I think it's in one of the slides, Rasayana, which is all about longevity. And that's like a buzzword now, longevity. And some people call it anti-aging, but Ayurveda didn't look at it as anti-aging. It was looked at as healthy aging, knowing that aging is a natural, inevitable process. But it is a process that can be influenced by our lifestyle choices. And we can gracefully navigate through our lives through conscious living, making conscious choices. But if we don't know what those choices are, we don't know, right? And this is what Ayurveda helps us with. It's not something to fear or to fight. I'm going to fight aging, this is this war against aging because it's natural, but rather a transformative phase of life that offers the potential for wisdom, inner growth, and spiritual maturity. So again, letting go of those attachments that we have along the way, this is the advantage we have as we get older, ideally, right? And some people take those opportunities, some people don't, but it's given to us, this opportunity. So Ayurveda celebrates the later stages of life, as do many cultures, right? In many cultures, the elders were looked to for their wisdom. You've probably heard the same things and read the same things I have, that in certain cultures, people overestimate their age. They don't want to say they're younger. We are obsessed in this West about age, and no, I don't want to tell anyone my age, or they say they're younger than they are. But in certain cultures, when aging and is revered, they overestimate their age. They say they're older because that implies you've had all this life experience, and that's the advantage to aging, right? So it celebrates these later stages of life as a time for contemplation, teaching, sharing your wisdom and experiences, and spiritual refinement to get to that sannyasi stage where we really detach. Activities like self-inquiry, meditation, prayer, service, as Swami mentioned, are emphasized in this stage of life. Rather than clinging to youth, Ayurveda encourages savoring the fruits of our experience and living with purpose and with, grace and peace as much as possible. Okay, next slide. So there is this whole branch, Ayurveda, there's specialty areas. It did have branches of specialty, and Rasayana is one of them. This is the branch that has to do with longevity, and not just longevity in years, that was part of it, but quality of life as we age. So Rasayana is the branch of Ayurveda dedicated to these concepts, rejuvenation. So that means rejuvenating our mind, rejuvenating our body, longevity, immunity, and vitality. So I'm going to talk about a few principles that were really important in Ayurveda with aging. The goal is to delay the aging process, meaning we can, lengthen the amount of healthy life that we have rather than shorten it. There are definitely things we can do to shorten life as well. That's called premature aging. Stress, certain habits, the way we eat, the things we drink, etc., can actually shorten life. Enhance immunity, improve mental clarity, and increase our overall vitality. I think that is what we want as we get older. Rasayana, again, essence. Rasa is like essence, ayana, the path of essence. So again, keeping our essence rejuvenated. And another term that also can mean like essence, the essence of vitality and immunity is just, I'm sure you've, and again, in like a lot of the metaphysical teachings and in the Yoga Sutras and in the Upanishads, you see these terms, and Ayurveda really takes the concepts of these terms into like, what does it mean as a human being? So the Rasayana therapies all nourish this ojas, which is the essence of, it's a subtle, it's not a measurable thing, you can't see it, but you feel it in your body. It's vitality, good immunity. So when you read things like, oh, this is good for ojas, this replenishes ojas, this depletes ojas, very important as we age to lean into the things that replenish ojas and avoiding the things that deplete it. And we'll talk about some of those things along the way. But go back to the last slide. And again, when we start these things, not only when we're older, but actually when you look at senescence and when you look at aging and biologically speaking, really the peak, I hate to say it because it looks like most of us, maybe everyone, is 30 or above, because the peak is really at 30, and every decade after that, from 30 to 40 to 50, things start declining. And that's really I mean, you can start younger than that, but ideally that's the best time to do all of these practices, but it's never too late. As Swami said, it's never too late. And some of us wait until we're not feeling well and we start doing all these things, but midlife is actually the best time. So I'm going to talk later. There are some herbs that were considered Rasayana herbs because we're using the essence and the prana in plants and their particular qualities to restore our tissues, to rejuvenate and to stay vital. Diet, of course, number one. So, I mean, a lot of times people in Ayurveda, they say, what herb should I take for this? What herb should I take for this? And, a good Ayurvedic physician is also going to say, the herbs are only going to work if you're doing all of these other things. It's not like, substitute medicine for herb. So it very highly focuses on lifestyle. So diet, nourishing diet, easily digestible, and vata pacifying foods. I'm going to talk about vata in a minute. So these are the ones that are considered good for as we age. And we'll talk about why. Lifestyle, a daily routine and a seasonal routine, aligning that with nature. Having a routine is very important as we age. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Meditation and yoga, stabilizing the mind and the nervous system, and then periodically, some sort of panchakarma. In Ayurveda, this is a whole science, but these are detoxification therapies to clear toxins, to keep the tissues rejuvenated. Otherwise, we're going to have inflammation and disease. And so these can be simple practices. This can be, fasting like people do around religious holidays or seasons. If it doesn't have to be tied to religion, but so I teach like seasonal detoxification, and it doesn't have to be. The more ama and toxicity that somebody has built up, the more advanced some of the practices need to be. But simply taking a step back and doing some simple diet, simple practices are helpful. Okay, next slide. So going back to what is this body? Many of you, I'm sure all of you know about the Mahabhutas, the 5 elements: space, air, fire, water, earth. And what these 5 elements are from an Ayurvedic perspective are the building blocks of our body and mind, to some degree, like our mental tendencies. But everybody is made up of these principles in the body. So we say space, air, fire, water, earth, Akasha, Vayu, Tejas, Jala, Prithvi. Sometimes you'll see different words. You'll see Agni for fire, Apas for water, but what they represent is more important. The potential, there's a potential between all of our cells for anything to happen, and we can impact what happens then in the body. Movement, of course, there's constant movement in the body of air, electrical signals, of food, water, breath. Fire represents transformation. So this is our digestive process, our detox pathways. Water is the lubricating and cohesive parts of our physiology. And then earth is actual matter, like our bones, our muscles, We need all of these elements. All of the elements exist within us. And that's why a lot of worship and devotional practice is, and even being out in nature and looking up at the sky and feeling the wind, this replenishes all of these aspects to our physiology. In subtle ways, but also we can do it through diet and other things in gross ways, meaning more material ways. And this is Ayurveda focuses on this. So next slide. So how these 5 elements create patterns in nature is by combining in different ways. And then we oftentimes call these mind-body types in Ayurveda mind-body constitutions, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, but they also represent aspects of nature. So, I always ask people to also consider the metaphor that the bigger concept that these terms are trying to explain. So Vata is movement. It's the qualities of space and air. So when you think about space and air, and I just listed 5 of them, but there are actually 10 pairs of gunas that describe all of the qualities of our human experience. So we only experience life as qualities. Like we don't experience something as, 92 degrees. We experience it as hot or as cold, right? We don't experience something as like, I don't know what this type of wood is. We experience it as hard or soft, right? So Ayurveda is very qualitative. It describes the qualities that we experience. So when space and air are dominant, and this can be in a person, it can be in a climate, it can be in a, anything we interact with, we're seeing more cold, dry, light, mobile, and irregular, because those are the qualities of space and air. Fire and water represent this pitta principle, and that's hot, moist, oily, acidic, intense. Kapha is more structure. It's the more gross elements. So it's because of the water, it's cool, moist. The earth brings in heavy, it's soft, it's smooth, it's slow. So the reason I'm bringing all of these up is we're going to focus on Vata, because in Ayurveda, it's described we have stages of life. So childhood is the Kapha stage of life. If you think about it, it's like the spring. So there's more moisture, our skin is soft, we have more fatty tissue. That's normal when we're children. There's growth, there's ideally more calm, right? Like it's playful, it's easeful. That, it represents spring. Then we go into the summertime of our life, from basically puberty until, age 40 or 50, when we go through the next transition. That's the summer. So there's more heat, there's more focus, there's more activity, because now we need to study, work, focus, take care of children, all the things we do as adults. Then the next transition is the fall. So with aging, we're kind of going into the fall of life, the autumn, where Vata qualities will start to dominate. No matter what your constitution is naturally, everybody accumulates cold, dry, light, mobile, and irregularity as we get older. Look at nature. In the fall, all the plants, all the animals act differently, because that's that season of the year. So we have this season of life called the Vata stage of life. Okay, next slide. So the role of these doshas in aging is Vata dosha predominates. Again, just think about nature, because Ayurveda it's all about, all of these doshas also represent themselves in nature. So when we look at nature, like the fall, so it's associated with qualities like dryness, lightness, coldness, irregularity. Like if you think about the fall, it's more dry, and even in altitude, the air is lighter, it's more cold, windy, it's more irregular. One day it might be warm, the next day it's cold. There's like irregularity, right? All of these qualities are observed in the aging body, if you think about it. And as a physician, I see it all the time, and in parents, as I see them, drier skin, our bones get thinner, our hands and feet might start getting cold, irregular digestion. These are all the common things we see as people get older. More so if people are Vata types, but that's a whole nother course. I think online there's still the Ayurveda, like the 6-week thing, right? That I had done. Yeah. So if you're interested, you can go and do that, because we go into all of these concepts. But for the purposes of aging and what we can do, Vata dosha predominates. It's just like in the fall, you start wearing coats, you start wearing boots, you start putting, you notice your skin is drier. So we do these things all the time. This is just going to be, more conscious, intentional living as we get older. So balancing Vata becomes the primary focus in Ayurvedic anti-aging strategies, or healthy aging. And when we balance in Ayurveda, what that means is we balance with the opposite. Again, when you're cold, you don't go sit in an ice bath, you sit by a fire. If you're hot, you don't sit by the fire, you go get cool, right? So we balance through opposites. Samanya Vishesha Siddhanta is this principle. Like increases like and opposites balance. Okay, next slide. So this is just a summary of like the qualities, some of the more qualities of Vata dosha that we'll start to see. If we can stay balanced, this allows us as we get older to be energetic and creative. Again, space allows us to connect to the expansiveness of consciousness, creativity, and connection to everything around us. This is kind of the wisdom, and in indigenous cultures, elders connected to the spirits. This is Vata dosha allowing us to do that. You can become more adaptable, good communicator, enthusiastic and lively, as Swami said, laughing and being enthusiastic about life. But out of balance, if we don't keep Vata balance, these are all the things we see as we get older, right? Anxiety, an overactive mind, worry, ruminating, inconsistency means can't make a decision, insomnia, very big, constipation, gas, bloating, fatigue. Right, so not a necessity of getting older. This is a sign that Vata dosha is out of balance. So there are things we can do about it. Okay, next slide. So one of the things we do is keep our Agni strong. You've heard of Agni, right? The fire. But within us, it means our ability to digest all of our life experience. Our food, yes, but also all of our conversations. Everything that happens at the store, we go and stand at, all of everything, the sensory experiences that we have to be able to digest that. So we need to keep Agni strong. If we don't have and as part of the Vata dosha, Agni starts to get irregular. So this is why sometimes we, as we get older, maybe we think we can't adjust to things as well as we used to. So that could be a sign Agni is getting weak. And when Agni is weak, we can't make ojas. So all of our life experience, all of our food, all of the sensory input that comes on, instead of creating nourishment from that, we can create actually toxicity. So this is, again, relationships that we have with people, etc. So we want to keep our Agni strong. Okay, next slide. So, this is what I talked about. So there are certain characteristics to your ability to digest with each of the doshas. So in Vata dosha, it's irregular. Pittas have a strong Agni. So some people, if that's their nature, maybe they don't have as much of that issue as they get into this Vata stage. They still can. And Kaphas, all of these have their associated Agni characteristics. So the general state of our Agni is typically based on our primary dosha, but irregular Agni is from an accumulation of Vata dosha as we age. So even if you had regular digestion, even if you felt like you could handle these things, as we get older, we have to do things to keep that Agni strong, to balance Vata dosha. Those things go together. Okay, next slide. So what do we do to optimize our Agni, which will also help make more ojas? Okay, these things are all connected. We meditate. We do some mindful movement, whether it's walking, yoga, moving your breath, pranayam. So that's why all of these practices become very important as we get older. And again, not only as we get older, but starting anytime, but especially, as I mentioned, that age 30 to 40, best time to start. Listen to your appetite. It can reduce as we get older. You might have been able to eat this much food, but that irregular Agni, and there are ways to keep it strong, but you might notice that's, and you have to listen, get good sleep, very important. By definition, it's harder to sleep. So sometimes we need support for that, but it's very important to get good sleep. And now with all the studies, we know like dementia and brain health and memory, all of those things rely on good sleep. Our brain health is better if we sleep. Kindle the Agni by, using fresh ginger, drinking ginger tea, lemon water, and sipping warm. So warm. The dosha is cold, so we need warm things. Okay, next. Oh, you might want to click through. Yeah. Oh, sorry, skip this slide. We don't really need this slide. Okay, so eating to balance Vata dosha and this irregular Agni, you can decrease gas and bloating by cooking with herbs and spices that decrease gas and bloating. Fennel is a great one. Sometimes having, like, I know I've stocked all these things in my house now because my dad is with me. So we have peppermint tea for cramping. We have fennel tea for gas. We have, all these other different, herbs and things for all of these symptoms that can come up. And 100%, he's eating warm cooked foods. So that's very important. Now, you doesn't have to be 100% if your digestion's pretty good, but you want to start favoring more warm cooked foods because its balance is vata. Warm is the opposite of cold. Moist is the opposite of dry. Heavy is the opposite of light. So this is going to keep nourishment in your body. Okay, next slide. And then, of course, when our Agni is strong, we make more Ojas. So Ojas is this essence. It gives us good immunity. It makes us vital. We look bright. So Ojas and Tejas does that as well. But aging is seen as the gradual depletion of Ojas, the vital essence that supports immunity, strength, spiritual glow. So again, you'll notice it's similar. The things that strengthen Agni also help to replenish Ojas. Proper digestion, keeping your Agni strong, loving relationships, peaceful mind, nourishing food. And so again, some of these foods like ghee, dates, almonds, fruits, whole grains, these things replenish Ojas. They're very nourishing for us, and adequate rest. And that includes sleep. All of those things will keep Ojas replenished. Okay, next slide. So in Ayurveda, very focused on daily routine. Routine is very important, and sleep science and food science and nutritional science, everything is showing that we have these rhythms, which Ayurveda knew already, that we have these rhythms throughout the day. And when we align our lifestyle with these natural rhythms and we're consistent with it, the body will automatically do what it's supposed to do. When we eat regular meals, when we have a regular sleep-wake cycle, you don't have to try to sleep. When you train your body to go to sleep at the same time, all of a sudden it knows without a clock what time it is, and you start to get sleepy. So these are just examples of what you could do as a morning routine. You don't have to do all of them, but this is why you hear about some of these practices in Ayurveda, especially as we get older. Natya is nasal oil. Now, I could go into a whole lecture on each of these practices because there's a lot of now new science around what all of these practices do. But in the context that I'm talking about, it's oil. Oil. It was interesting Swami mentioned oil, because in Ayurveda, oil is the antidote to aging, because we get dry, the joints get dry, the gut gets dry. Our nervous system, brain, and everything is made from fats and oils. Well, other things too, but nourishes the nervous system. So putting nasal oil benefits, the nasal passages, then we can breathe better, etc. So there's all of these effects from doing these. Oil pulling, putting oil in your mouth. We know when you have less inflammation in the mouth, and that leads to less inflammation in other parts of the body and heart disease and all of the things. So that's why that's a very common practice. Herbal oral care. So you can use, again, herbalized toothpaste powders. Abhyanga, this is probably the most important, massaging the body with warm oil. You can just use sesame oil. You can use Mahanarayana oil, which is like an herbalized, classical Ayurvedic herbalized oil recipe. You can buy them online. There are lots of really good Ayurvedic product companies that you can purchase, and that helps in particular. I have patients do that on their joints if they have joint pain. Doing that on the joints especially can help. And then gentle yoga pranayam. And then you've probably heard of Chavanprash. It's like an herbal jam. It's a very ancient Ayurvedic sort of prescriptive jam. It has like 30 to 40 different herbs, depending on who makes it. It has ghee, it replenishes ojas. It has honey, which is also, sattvic. And so if you get a good one, then just 1 teaspoon a day is all you need to keep the tissue replenished. So you can just eat it off a spoon. You can put it on a little piece of toast. You can mix it in water, juice or something. It's a little sticky, but, I know my dad, he likes to spread it on a piece of bread, or, he can just take it off a spoon. If it's if it is made in a more traditional way, it does taste a little herby. So, you have to like that taste, but you can get used to it. Some of the ones that are more designed for our Western palates, they're a little, they have a little more sweetness to them so that we like them. But it's very, very good for you. Okay, next slide. So in the afternoon, again, warm cooked foods, as I mentioned. Khichdi is obviously a very good food, but it could be steamed veggies. soups, things, and also some spice, but milder spice, because that spices, they have air quality. So typically that's not good for the digestion as we get older, and avoiding raw foods. And then taking a pause in the middle of the day. We don't have to be as active as we used to, right? So you can rest, do meditation, just be, mindfulness, just be present. Looking outside the window, being in nature, just, prayer also could be a pause. And also avoid overstimulation of the senses, because Vata dosha is very sensitive. It's part of the nervous system. And when our senses are overloaded, then that creates an imbalance in Vata dosha. So we want to avoid overstimulation. Okay, next slide. And then in the evening, there are evening herbs you can do. There's Brahmi, which is great for cognition, memory, creates a calm. Ashwagandha, I have a couple of slides. I won't go into too much detail, but there are herbs again. Because of this Vata imbalance that naturally occurs, this is part of nature, sometimes it is helpful to do some herbs as we get older. There's the golden milk. I'm sure many of you are familiar, the turmeric, and you can use almond milk, regular milk, any kind of milk, or good whole milk as well. And it does help to promote sleep. It's also, you can put a little bit of ghee in it, again, just the oiling part, and it soothes the digestion. So that's good. And then this is a really good, again, oil, a foot massage before sleep. Any kind of warm oil on the feet will help. And of course, there's all these herbalized medicated oils that you can use, but if you want to just use simple sesame oil, coconut oil, that's very, very nourishing and helps you sleep. Okay, next. So there are a couple of slides, and I'm happy to share them. I'm not going to go through it, but these are just some of the herbs, some typical doses, little notes about them. Next slide too, and then this one talks about how they're used traditionally, what the benefits are. But of course, disclaimer, always make sure you talk to, we say, a health provider, especially if you're on medications, because there sometimes can be interactions. It's not that you can't use them, but you want to, get guidance from somebody that has some knowledge about them, rather, before you go out and just start like taking things, right? Because they are very bioactive. You have effects all of the systems of our body. But in this branch of Rasayana in Ayurveda, there are about a dozen or 24 herbs that were considered Rasayana that can be taken long term as we get older. Most herbs were just for treatment purposes. So you take them short term, and then whatever you're treating, you get to the root cause, it resolves. But for these Rasayana herbs, next slide, it was considered, okay to take them, especially as we get older, on a daily basis. So regular routine, I mentioned regular sleep. So irregular, Vata dosha is irregular, space and air really have no structure to them, right? So we have to create a structure, regular routine, regular sleep, wake time, regular meals, very, very balancing and calm for Vata and for our nervous system. So much as we get older, the nervous system starts to get out of balance. It's pretty much the equivalent of Vata in the body. So all of these practices that balance Vata, balance the nervous system. Calming and grounding rituals. So walking, nature is really good. Nature is very healing. And so even just looking at and listening to nature, sometimes people live in places you can't get out in nature all the time every day. But listening to chants, bhajans, calming music, is very, again, anything that's calming. And everyone's different. So again, that's something to consider. Just because something works and someone likes one thing doesn't mean it's right for someone else. So, we have to have a little flexibility there. I usually ask people, what do you listen to that feels calming? And so let them choose. Because sometimes if you are caring for someone older, it's really tempting to think everything and they should be doing. So, and I see patients every Thursday. Just this last Thursday, a woman came in with her mother-in-law, and they're, again, having some of these things going on. And it's the conversation I have all the time is let them guide that, because we were talking about, feeling independence and self-reliance. And, I think that is something we need to surrender to a little bit. Independence, like we can't be dependent forever, and in fact nobody is. That's a little bit of a myth anyway. None of us are independent. Have any of us done everything in our lives completely by ourselves? No. So this concept of independence, I struggle with this sometimes with patients. They don't want to give up their keys. They know, I want to be independent, I want to drive. So moving from independence, rather than like thinking of it as I'm losing my independence, we're moving, and I read this in an aging, and I really liked it, this concept of moving from independence to interdependence. It sounds better, right? And it feels better. It's like we can depend on each other, right? So there's this concept that you are the one who's getting older, that this is a fallacy that we're independent anyway. So just surrender that, and maybe start to think about becoming more interdependent. That can be with family, children who are trying to help, neighbors, community, a community, like this one, like accepting help is okay. So yeah. Favoring warm and oily. I can't talk enough about oil. In the Charaka Samhita, which is like one of the big textbooks of Ayurveda, there's a saying, and and oil is so revered in Ayurveda. And especially as we get older, it's probably, if you're going to pick one thing, just start oiling your body all the time. So self-massage to combat dryness, stiffness in the joints. Gentle movement, very important to keep the joints moving. That's probably one of the best things for joint health, is to do stretching, because things get tight. The muscle elasticity, all those years of life that we have, our body keeps the score. In the behavioral health world, there's a psychotherapist who wrote a book, The Body Keeps the Score, and it's literally the body you have right now is the accumulation of every activity you've done from the day you were born. And so in the healing process of all the muscles and all the little injuries we had that we just moved on from, there's some calcification, and part of that senescence is we lose elasticity of our tendons and our ligaments and things. So it's really important to do some sort of stretching activity, and whatever people like. And of course, walking if you can, and keeping up like some sort of muscle strength. So, there are these bands you use, gentle, to kind of create a little resistance. And that helps too, also to prevent falls, because that's a big thing that can happen. Our nervous system and all the signals of our body knowing where we are in space, unfortunately, that does start to decline. Mental peace, mindfulness, mantra, avoiding overstimulation of the senses, because the more overstimulated our senses are, the more overstimulated our mind is. So, very, very important, of course, mental peace. Because even though things can happen in the body, like we can maintain as much as we can, keep the body comfortable as much as possible. I think, what people really seek is mental peace, right? As for all of life, but especially as we get older. And one of the things that can do that is purposeful living. And this is why we do need a somewhat, able body, staying engaged in meaningful activities, maintaining strong social ties. That's very important. Loneliness is very bad for us. Avoid overstimulation, avoid isolating, avoid erratic routines, and avoid dryness, and prioritize peace of mind. That might mean letting go of some of the activities, some of the social engagements. Letting go is good. Nourishing relationships, letting go of relationships, or minimizing interactions that aren't nourishing for you. Why? You don't have to do that anymore, right? Or ever, really, but sometimes. And purposeful living, like selfless service, finding things you're passionate about, supporting causes, purpose, even reading things that you're passionate about. I mean, again, sometimes the eyes start to decline, and now there's audiobooks, just anything that feels nourishing. So the one word I would say is nourishing. Okay, I think that's the last slide. So yeah, I think again, you can take that off. If you want, it's the last slide. So I think just again, in closing, like Ayurveda, I realized gives us, and medical science is now confirming pretty much everything that Ayurveda has taught, because there was this observation of what qualities increase and how can we balance that with opposites. So it's simple concepts, but it's also very sophisticated in its understanding of human physiology. And so all of the different practices. I always tell people, pick the ones that are the easiest to implement right away. And think about what will create warmth, moisture, oiliness, calm, and nourishment, right? Like those are the things we want to focus on as we get older. And why? Because, ultimately we want to, as we get older, be able to step into that immortal part of ourselves, right? And that's, again, what the whole Ayurveda is about, transcending sort of what's happening in the body and the mind so that we can experience consciousness. And that is our true nature, Atman. So there's a lot in Ayurveda to help us as we get older. So, all right. Thank you. Thank you for listening. I'm happy to take questions with Swami. Yeah.
Sure. So thank you, Dr. Patel. That's a beautiful presentation. I think right now I'd like to do I'd like to have, can we get Swami on the big screen here? And let's have a split screen of Swami and Dr. Sheila Patel for those in the Zoom world. And if you're in the Zoom world, if you want to ask a question, you're welcome to basically raise your hand. So I believe you just go to the bottom of the screen and go to, I believe, tools, and just raise your hand and we will call on you because we like to get some live questioning. So let me, and in our live audience also, if anybody has a question, just raise your hand, all right? So let me start off the questioning here. Is that Swami and Dr.
Yes.
Patel, one of the things that, Dr. Patel was talking about, as we age, we get into the fall season of our life. So it seems like things are like the leaves to just we start to let go of the things that are normally that we were holding on to. All right, well, as we age, I noticed then though that it is challenging sometimes to let go. Mark, can you speak a little bit about, I'd like to, Swami, if you can speak a little bit about what are some of the spiritual practices we can do in focusing on surrender, focusing on letting go, because as Dr. Patel was mentioning, one of the challenges is independence. You'll find, what I've seen, people want autonomy, they want independence as they're aging. They want to hold on. Marge, one of the things they say when they ask men, what's the most difficult thing of letting go when you get older? You know what the most difficult thing is? Your driver's license. The letting go of driving, because driving represents independence. When they asked women, this was from, they said it was their beauty. But how do you let go of these things? Okay, Mark, this is the question. To be able to go from what we say independence to intradependence, as Dr. Patel was saying, to be able to, accept help, and then also even eventually to dependence on God. Can you talk a little bit about that, Marge, in this practices here?
Yeah, briefly, thank you, Sheila, for the wonderful presentation. And I enjoyed it immensely. About letting go, now, the ego is a grasp. It is a grasping element.
Yes.
And what happens is this ego is one that is subject to ignorance. So your independence and all whatever you want to be not letting go, it is rooted in ignorance. And that ego wants to consolidate, to harmonize, to crystallize things around itself, the self-importance. When you look around and you find there are people out there better than us in every possible ways, that's a big blow. So we keep your eyes and ears and everything open and try to understand the greater picture of life, that life will flourish only through interdependence, and which it does. No life ever flourishes in independence or isolation, or kind of in a shell. So knowing this, and then, of course, then you say, you just spoke about depending on God. That depending on God comes much later. First, you have to convert that ego into a sattvic ego. Suppose it's a tamasic ego. It has
Right.
to be converted into a rajasic, and from rajasic into a sattvic. In a sattvic ego, that ego is light and joy and happiness and unselfishness. So that ego does not harm you. So if you want to depend on yourself, on your independence, yes, depend on the sattvic aspect of your ego, and which is in a way interdependent on everything. So that's my view on it. Sheila can elaborate also on
Beautiful. I love that. I love that, Marge. So try to basically, I think even when Dr. Patel was talking about how to get back to your balanced self, a sattvic
Yes.
ego, in all of these things, because we become imbalanced, trying to get back into balance. So all the tools, and so yes, and then from the sattvic ego, we can make the jump eventually to dependence on God, if that was the natural outcome. Wonderful. Dr. Patel, you have any thoughts about this?
Yeah, I love that, because there is also this concept in Ayurveda of like what happens at the Mahaguna level. Like when we come in, we have this sattvic nature. If you look at kids, they like
Right.
love each other and they don't look at,
Playful.
yeah, very
Yes,
playful
exactly,
and
yes.
loving. And so
Yes.
that, but then we get into this rajasic stage, right?
Yes.
Where now we're like,
Yes.
and then tamasic. So this is kind
Yeah.
of like just what happens. We become more rigid in our thinking.
Right.
We don't want to change, right? So this is where you can, again, just try to create some change, reconnect to, spiritual practice, because that's
Yes.
going to increase that sattvic nature of the mind. And then your mind and your, conditioning
Right.
becomes sattvic. So yeah, so there are many practices. So any practice that increases sattva in the mind, I think will be, helpful in kind of identifying your individual self more as in a sattvic nature rather than tamasic nature. The other thing I would add is there's kind of that little bridge called emotions that's really hard for people to talk about. It's like easier in some ways to talk about like spiritual practice, and then it's okay, what food should I eat? But I think our nature and the ego, because of its own defensiveness, is hard to talk about emotions. And so like I tend to like recommend diving into, because that can sometimes be the obstruction to you understand all the spiritual teachings, but then how do I implement that ego starts to, show up, all that conditioning from our lives, and why do we hold on so tightly to all of these things and ideas? And so even though it can be challenging and sometimes it's not worth going there, and you can transcend things with your spiritual practice, but that can be an area where, kind of contemplating, I think this, where does this come from, can be helpful. Yeah. Challenging, but helpful.
It's interesting, Marge, because I think as you get older, sometimes what I've noticed as well is people become more irritable. Sometimes they become more angry. So these are emotions. Marge, you talked about one of the kleshas being fear, and then attachment is the opposite. I mean that anger comes as a result of what you're not getting. Can you
Yes.
talk a little bit about that? About how? So Dr. Patel is talking about emotions as an obstruction, as also in the kleshas. So how do we do an emotional cleansing, especially when you get older? Can you maybe talk a little bit about, how do we do an emotional cleansing within ourselves? Is it good to cry? Is it good to show emotion? Sometimes, the elderly people don't want to be vulnerable to the people, but what do you say about that? In other words, I'm talking about how do you accept the things that are going on with you? Why we're resisting, Marge. There's a resistance getting older. There's a resistance, and we grieve. We are grieving who we were. We are grieving the loss of everything we used to do. This is going on simultaneously. So you mentioned that aging is a fact of life. You mentioned the whole thing. You're talking about aging is inevitable. Yes, theoretically, yes, but psychologically, it is very hard to let go of. So maybe you can talk a little bit about these points. Swamiji, then Dr. Sheila Patel.
Well, let Sheila answer that.
Okay. Maybe Dr.
Yeah, I mean,
cleansing maybe a little bit.
yeah, again, like there is, again, spiritual practice, right? So part of like working with the mind, right? You can shift the way you think by like reading what spiritual, like what Guru said, and reading all these spiritual books and thinking about it, reflecting on it. So it requires that the person wants to do that, right? Because sometimes we read these things and we say, oh, that makes me feel good. That person was so wise, but then we don't reflect on those teachings in our own life. Right. So if someone is more spiritually inclined, they can be encouraged to like, well, look at what the spiritual teaching is like. How do you think that reflects in your life or what's happening right now, or how can you apply that in your life? And just, again, a lot of it is asking people rather than telling, especially they're adults, they're, live their whole life. They have wisdom and they're, but yeah, so there's that. And then of course, there's a lot of Western type psychology tools that I've kind of used a lot because, I think it's been a really great thing, like that's, developed. Yeah. So like, again, one thing is, like counseling in the sense of like talking to somebody about how you feel, and as people sometimes don't even realize they have all these feelings. Like think about someone their whole life who was never allowed to have feelings, or where they were shut down, like don't get angry, don't cry, don't, so you start to resist even having emotions. So sometimes just, no, and that's, again, some people that's not in their sort of wheelhouse to do something like that, but that can be very helpful. And it could be a spiritual counselor, right? It doesn't, you have to be like a psychologist, but just somebody to talk to that can hear you and validate. That's different than like a family member, right? So you need a counselor of some sort, whether, again, and all spiritual traditions had that, where you would go and you would talk to somebody in your tradition. Then, of course, there's a lot of like journaling practices where you can like write down what you're feeling. And that's one way of like kind of taking it inside of your energetic field and like dumping it. And so that can be very effective if people are writers. You just write down everything you're thinking and then shred it. Nobody has to ever read it again. But, because that's one thing people, again, are very vulnerable. Like, what if somebody reads that? I don't want anybody to know my inner thoughts. Right. But so that, and there's studies on journaling and how it helps you shift out of these reactive modes to your more cognitive and reflective parts of your brain. And so that's, that can, and there's all different types of journaling practice you can do. There's just allowing yourself to feel an emotion, and saying, but again, this includes a shift in that it's what I'm feeling in my body is actually an emotion, because we feel emotions. And then breathing into that and letting it dissipate instead of like feeling an emotion and acting on it, So again, this is a whole world that sometimes is a little challenging because especially generationally, people haven't been allowed to talk about feelings. Yeah. So, I'm not saying it's easy, but there are, all of these kind of mental activities. And then ultimately, and like learning early on, like yoga and the asanas and like pranayama, actually helps to clear a lot of that residual emotion that we're holding in the body so that we're not carrying it into later years. So that's why, again, like addressing these things early on can help us as we get older, because at that point, sometimes it's hard to shift how people think about things, but
yeah. Let me add a little to what Sheila has said.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, it's the emotions. It's formed as everybody knows. It's part of that limbic system, and it's we are not exclusive in this creation. All animals feel emotions, and this is a very ancient part of our own nervous system. And we share these emotions with everything, like the hunger and sex and rage and aggressiveness. This is shared by all, even reptiles and even down to crustaceans, everything. So we must be able to understand that these are ancient structures in our being. And rather than trying to deny it, trying to kind of squash it, trying to stifle it, I think journalism is a very good, you can say, way, and it has been found to be very effective. But to recognize first that we are not exclusive in our emotions. Uh, every living being shares the same emotional traits like us, mostly. And so this idea that, oh, like for instance, oh, boys shouldn't cry or something like that. Now they say, okay, it's good, it's okay to cry. Yeah, what's wrong with that? So at the same time, your higher cognitive development also can rein in excessive emotions, the things that will take you off the rails. That also needs to be, and this like will go with counseling, with guidance, with reading scriptures, etc. So we need to balance both these things. Don't try to deny those emotions first. And it's not secret. Everybody knows, the whole creation knows what you are at. And
It's very
and
true.
but at the same time, hold them in check so that they don't master you, they don't overpower you. That's it.
Thank you, Maharaj. I think sometimes what comes to mind, Maharaj, is that when you use balance, sometimes the
Yes,
idea
yes,
you get
yeah,
older, I'm not sure if it's healthier to go into more isolation where they want to, let's say, focus extremely just on God, but they may be using that as an excuse to just sort of withdraw from just life itself. Trying to find that balance between withdrawing, knowing where they're trying to hit the focusing on God, but in the same way, also there's this withdrawal, I find something which can be unhealthy, and having the balance of engaging with society, engaging with others as a way to activate their activate their mind, activate their body in this engagement. So connection is the main thing, Raj. Connection, talk about connecting with God, which is one thing here, but also, it's also, I find, important to connect with other beings as well, the social aspect as well. That's, I'm trying to find that balance for some of the elderly people that I have to meet with, and to see. Do you have any thoughts about that? Any, both of you?
Yeah, I mean,
well
I think,
we,
oh, go ahead.
yeah,
Go
we
ahead,
are all
Swami.
interconnected beings. At the same time, as you keep on growing older, what happens is uh, we have become a little wiser also. We don't want to get into trouble because we have got into trouble a lot when we were young. And so we want to we take a kind of a backseat in many things at times. And this is healthy. But at the same time, as you said, it has to be balanced because the brain and the body grows with interaction.
Yeah.
Yes, and our bodies and minds were designed for interaction. So, so we need to have, again, I said we have to balance both these things together. You need to take steps back at times and keep quiet, and you need to have your own personal space, and that also has to be respected.
Right.
You don't go and barge in when people are just they want to stay quiet.
Right.
So let them process some old hurt or pain. It's better. But then again, you got to interact with others so that you remain healthy and stable.
Yeah. Thank you. Did you share?
Yeah, I think I'll just add, I'm glad you brought that up about, we do need more rest. We need more calm, like backing up. And so again, in interactions, as if you're taking care of parents or what have you, because I know I went through the stage where, my father was a very active person and loved doing things and going out. And then through the transition, I think he also, is just enjoying more spiritual things and not needing to go out and do everything as much. So then we would make him go out, and like do things, but then that would throw everything off. So then I realized at a time like, oh, that's okay, and like again, we have to be very observe like what is actually best. And the person sometimes knows, I just want to rest, and then feeling okay with it, because sometimes if we
Yes.
feel guilty, then we're trying to do things that aren't best for our family member. But also, and we've had this conversation, it's challenging, I think, in our world, especially here, and well, lots of places I'm learning now, where community has just broken up, because not only interaction, but for older people, the people who've studied this, the most important are their peer relationships. And so as you get older, there are less people of your peers, because you lose people, and that's hard, that loss. But so communities where people can gather that are of a certain experience, life experience, and can complain to each other or lift each other up or what have you, like that is very important. And that's something I think that's lacking in the right ways. I mean, some people can find a community and thrive, but again, in the spiritual sense, it's hard to find. We need more of those. We need more of those communities for people who are more spiritual to gather with like-minded people of their own age. Yeah.
Absolutely, right.
Yeah.
I see, so I want to go, does anybody in the audience have a question here? Okay, now let's go with the online. I know there's a hand raised there. Please just state who you are, and is it Inil? Is that who you say? Yeah.
My name is Husseina Dalal, and I thoroughly enjoyed the talks by Swamiji and Dr. Patel. And maybe I missed in the introduction, but would like to know, Dr. Patel, where you practice and how can we contact you?
So I see patients 1 day a week up in North San Diego County, but it's like in the regular medical system. So, it's insurance based and all those things. And I mean, I do have a website, so I usually send people there in the contact area to just, you can put in your contact, and then like in the comments, just say like, oh, I saw you at Vedanta, the talk, and, and then you can leave a message there. And it takes me sometimes a little while to get back to people. But that is one way to just connect to me at least. And then, yeah, but practice wise, I was doing some online things. And then again, for my own balance, I'm not doing as many of those anymore. So, yeah, but yeah, I'm doing a little bit more teaching and other things, but yeah.
So you don't have an Ayurveda practice that you actively are doing?
Not for just people that I've been seeing for some time that I continue. But yeah, right now I'm not doing more because I just don't have the space for it.
Okay, so you said I should leave a message in this chat.
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
On the website, it's just www.Dr. Sheila Patel. So it's Dr, no capitals, no periods, and then my name.com. And then, yeah, the contact, and at least that's a way then we can keep in touch. But,
Okay.
and I do, yeah, because I try to focus on teaching people, the principles so that they, yeah, so sometimes that's what I'll do. If somebody will send me a message, then I'll recommend other people that I might know that they can do consultations with. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
And sometimes it depends on what's going on with the person. So usually if they give me just a little bit of history, then I'll know like maybe who might be able to help with that. Yeah.
Right. Because I'm like close to North San Diego. That's why. But thank you so much for responding. Thank you very much.
Is there another hand? Okay. What's the name? Darcy, I can't see it. Usha. Okay, Usha, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you so much, Swamiji. Thank you so much, Dr. Patel. I apologize for not having my video on, but my camera has not been working and I haven't sorted out why that's happening. So that's the only reason you don't see me smiling at you, Swamiji. But I do have a question, and that is, you both, in the course of your individual talks, I think you both talked about self-reliance, and you talked about letting go and interdependence. And I was wondering if Swamiji, especially if you could tease out the difference where self-reliance and independence, especially with older people. And I say this because I have four older parents. I myself am 60 and I have four older parents that I'm dealing with. And it's a delicate balance. Where is the self-reliance and where is the independence? And I'm looking at this for myself too as I age. So Can you perhaps explain that a little bit more? How do we keep our self-reliance while also letting go?
Yeah, the short answer is, if you have a mantra or you have a meditation,
Yeah.
do more of it. That mantra will be your support. Okay, that is. And secondly, when you are interacting with others, you will, after years or maybe after months of really being established in that mantra or the spiritual practice, you will interact with the people you are caring for through that mantra or the spiritual practice that you're doing.
Mhm.
So it will be a spiritual exercise.
Mhm.
It will be a powerful form of karma yoga.
Mhm.
And that will really draw them to you. So you will be interacting with them not just as a caretaker, but as a spiritual aspirant.
Mhm.
They want also to see that you are strong, competent, and balanced. As I said, you have to now shift your idea or your center of gravity from yourself to your mantra practice or your mantra repetition or your
Mhm.
spiritual practice.
Mhm.
That is the best way of self-reliance. You rely on the name of God,
I see.
on your spiritual practice, and do everything through that medium.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And again, I fully agree. And it's a good reminder as you were speaking, Swami, because it's
Yeah.
challenging for both parties, right? The caretaker
Yeah.
and the person who's being cared for, that both parties need to be just doing mantra all the time, right? But but the balance, I think, is the key. And I'm taking notes too, as I'm getting older, like I think, and I'm lucky in the sense, that my dad was also very spiritual. And so like self-reliant, the interdependence comes more from the body, right? Because that's what actually is going to decline. Like we know that for sure. We're going to need help. Like this is that cellular aging that happens, like for the most part, right? We all know the stories and we like to show the videos of like older people who are so independent and doing all these, and I almost sometimes feel like we shouldn't do that because like that's the exception more than the rule, honestly. So the body, like I think that's where the interdependence and reliance on people help us. The mind, I think, is where we can the most be more self-reliant, right? On like, then you're not expecting your person who's caring for you to depend on them for all your emotional needs, right? So that's where we can start to become more self-reliant, and the spiritual needs. And so that's where, again, the more we kind of transcend and can have peace in our own mind, then that's where we can become the most self-reliant, versus the body, really.
Yeah. Swamiji talked about your definition of aging was wonderful. Someone asked, can you just go through those points again? How do you know when you're aging?
Yeah, that was good.
Looking at it. And,
I'll go through. As long as the freshness and interest are gone, you are old. When you talk about killing time, you are old. When one is not interested in new things, one is old. One who is constantly finding faults and criticizing, one is old. It does not matter what's your biological age. One who is repeatedly asking for help and is not self-reliant to a greater degree is old. And one who has lost their sense of humor and smiles is old. So keep smiling.
very interesting. You remind me, regarding point number 2, didn't Ramakrishna say, as long as I live, so long do I learn? Right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And Holy Mother says, I never saw Ramakrishna morose. He was always in joy and bliss. And that's another index of spirituality. Swami Vivekananda was very, very firm. Long faces are, you can say, indicative of dyspepsia. So he's saying when you have a long clouded face, don't go out. That's a disease.
Right.
So spirituality means you're happy, you're smiling, you're interacting, you're looking at the world anew.
With fresh eyes.
Yes.
Yeah. You were a disciple of Swami Revered Swami Bhuteshanaji Maharaj, I believe, right? Can you talk a little about him when he was aging? Did he? Because he seemed to have these qualities you're mentioning, this aliveness, this smiling sense of humor. Can you mention a little bit about him, maybe?
Oh my God. I feel when he was in his 80s and even 90s, he was more intelligent, more stable, more fun-loving, and more humorous, more witty. He was everything to the highest degree. And we used to feel like pygmies in front of him. And yes, my guru has been a great influence on my life. I learned how to smile and, always there. So, yes, what was about him? He was loving at the same time, he was humorous, and he never wasted any time. He was always doing something, helping people, something or the other. If he had nothing, no people around him, he was found to be reading, even at that age. And his memory, oh, phenomenal. He could beat us, he could beat 100 of us hands down.
Yes.
Yes. So we talk about dementia and all these things. You look at him, his mind was fresh like a youthful, you can say, boy. Yeah, sharp.
Maharaj, one thing that I remember, I think he used to see things. It seemed like his awareness was ever expanding. So he would notice things that we would not normally notice. So, I mean, life for him was not just about just focusing, say, like on Ramakrishna or Mother like this, but it was the expansion of life. Spirituality also, I forget it was him that was watching tennis. There's one of the presidents who used to like watch sports or cricket, things like. So life was like, just it became a flourishing of like everything was life. Spirituality and life was just intermixed, right? They saw the divine in everything, and they enjoyed it. They had fun and everything. Swami Lokeshananda would watch cricket matches in his later part of his life there. So, what is it that? Can you explain a little bit about what is the relationship with life as you grow spiritually? Do you become more isolated, or do you grow into that?
Their consciousness is much more expanded than us. They feel that everything in life has a use, a purpose. Nothing is useless if it is there in creation. And only a truly spiritual person can really enjoy life. So if you want to enjoy life, be spiritual.
Yeah.
That's.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, so I think that's.
Swamiji, thank you so much. I'm Shanaz. You remember me?
Yeah, I do remember you, Shanaz.
Thank you so much. Please bless us all, especially the old ones.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
So, Swamiji, I want to thank you so much, and Dr. Sheila Patel for this incredible presentation about this lifestyle choices and practices for immortality. Whether you are old or young, it's inevitable. We're going to go through stages. And also, I think the idea also is that we may have older parents or older people that we have to take care of as well. So how do we take care of them in the proper way and try to get an understanding of what their needs are, so, and what they're going through. So Swamiji, thank you. So I think this is really, Marge, what's happening is now, especially in America, is we have a transition, as you're aware. We have from a spiritual standpoint, people are getting older, yes. From another standpoint, a lot of the people, especially the immigrants who come from, let's say, countries like India into America, they have to grow old in a different way now. Their thinking, their styles, what they knew of growing old is not the way they are growing old here. So they're having, what happens, Marge, is that they're used to thinking that their families will take care of them. And I'm finding, because I deal with a lot of parents, children are not there anymore. Their children are not there to help support the parents. Parents don't want to feel like a nuisance to their children. So they're ending up trying to go as much as they can, and until they just give out. And then they're forced to go into some type of facility. And it can be a very scary moment. So Marge, what I'm saying is that it sounds like right now we should try to prepare as much as possible in this journey, so that wherever we are, we won't feel alone. We make a connection to the divine, so that to feel that we have our eternal companion. So I want to thank everybody. Can we give them at least a clap? Just one quick announcement is
Thank you.
Next week, Swami Satyamayananda will be here. We'll have a potluck. And so we encourage everybody to come for that. And Marge, I was wondering if you can just maybe close us off with a prayer.
Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu. Om, peace, peace, peace. Whatever we have done today, may it be offered at the feet of Ram Krishna, and may he bless us.
Thank you, Marge. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swami.
Baby, here's Marge. And in words of Holy Mother Marge, Avarashun, come again.
Come again. Thank you.